right. So if you have been paying attention to the news, and maybe you haven't, you just kind of glance through the headlines, and you come across, this little tiff, if you will, what's going on with the UPS, United Parcel Service, which is the world's largest carrier, and the Teamsters. Sometime back, the UPS and the Teamsters consolidated a national agreement. And here recently, as much as a week ago, roughly from the time of this recording, the Teamsters have announced that they plan to sue UPS. And you might be asking why. Well, according to the Teamsters, I'll take it directly off their website so that you can hear it straight away. It's one of the reasons why I like podcasting. A lot of individuals are not willing to go to the links to, let's say, do any data mining to find anything out, but us podcasters are. And so we can disseminate information such as this one here. Now, according to the Teamsters, from their website, I'll have this link on this podcast episode, but the Teamsters Union filed an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction against United Parcel Service today, demanding the company shut down its plan to roll out a second illegal buyout scam targeting UPS Teamsters drivers. The package giant has told the union it aims to announce the Driver Choice Program this week. In court filings with the U.S. District Court in Massachusetts, the Teamsters detailed at least 6 violations of its National Master Agreement by UPS in the rollout of the buyout program, including direct dealing with new contracts with workers, elimination of union jobs when UPS contractually agreed to establish more positions, and erosion of the rights and privileges of union shop stewards, among other charges. Since late January, the Teamsters issued more than 57 requests for information and documents to UPS related to its plans for a revised driver buyout. UPS CEO Carol Tome and other corporate executives ignored the union's requests and appeared to have developed a DCP behind closed doors in direct violation of the UPS Teamsters agreement. The national contract was overwhelmingly ratified in 2023 to protect hundreds of thousands of full and part-time workers. For the second time in 6 months, this is a quote, "For the second time in 6 months, UPS has proven it doesn't care about the law, has no respect for its contract with the Teamsters, and is determined to try to screw our members out of their hard-earned money," quote, end quote, said Teamsters General President John O'Brien. Quote, "If Carol Toome has buyer's remorse for the historic, legally binding contract she signed with rank-and-file Teamsters, that's her problem. Our union will not allow UPS to inflate its earnings reports on the backs of Teamsters families. We've given too much to grow and sustain this company, and we will not be sold short. UPS must dismantle its illegal buyout program and resolve its contract violations in the courts, or the Teamsters will see this greedy corporation in the streets," end quote. If implemented, UPS's DCP would give drivers a one-time lump sum payment in exchange for Teamsters legally committing to never work for UPS again, to waive their rights to union representation, and to sacrifice a career's worth of strong union wages, employer-paid health care, and guaranteed retirement benefits. The scope of UPS's updated buyout program is much broader than the payoff presented to workers last summer, when UPS marketed payouts to more tenured drivers nearing retirement. The earlier program, which UPS called the Driver Voluntary Separation Program, DVSP, was widely rejected by Teamsters drivers nationwide, many of whom took to social media to shred and set fire to the insulting financial package offered by UPS to leave the company. Multiple Teamsters local unions have filed grievances against UPS over the contract violations inherent in its DVSP program. Those grievances are expected to enter binding arbitration next month following a National Grievance Committee hearing between the union and the company. The DCP, as noted in the union's lawsuit, would be offered to all drivers at UPS regardless of length of service and would do irreparable damage to the Teamsters and its right to representation. The letter of separation that workers would be forced to sign by management to complete enrollment in the program would be irrevocable, further damaging the union or any individual worker's ability to grieve or arbitrate the terms of separation. In its motions before the court on Monday, the Teamsters requested an injunction to prevent the rollout of UPS's DCP and a stay on further action by the company to offer such incentive programs until an arbitrator's ruling on the pending DVSP violations. As the Teamsters noted in its filing in Massachusetts, the DVSP and DCP programs are unmistakably similar. Quote, UPS's latest DCP scam is more than a contract violation. It's an assault on the rule of law and on every member of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, end quote, said General Secretary Treasurer Fred Zuckerman. Quote, if UPS is allowed to move forward with this illegal program, it would cause irrevocable harm to our union and a majority of hard-working members. The Teamsters Union ensured our members rejected UPS's insulting payoff last year. Unfortunately, UPS continues to reach new levels of greed and corruption that require our fight to continue, end quote. And here's where I want to really drive and hone in focus, okay? On January 27th, UPS announced it collected more than $8.5 billion in cash during the previous quarter, returned more than $6.4 billion to shareholders, and spent $1 billion on stock buybacks. Stock buybacks. There's a whole lot to unpack from what I just read, which is directly off of the Teamsters website. And I'm going to cite some additional sources when we're going through this, but that right there, and all these sources, by the way, will also be linked in podcast episode format, so you can go and check it, yourself if you so choose. Otherwise, you can take what I have said along with the fact that I have the various links included in the description, and you can, let's say, come up with your own conclusions. But that last paragraph that I just got done reading from them, all right? On January 27th, UPS announced it collected more than $8.5 billion in cash during the previous quarter, returned more than $6.4 billion to shareholders, and spent $1 billion on stock buybacks. That's a telling paragraph. Now, what they're alleging, of course, is that when they negotiated a contract, Here are the stipulations that you agreed to, and here are our stipulations that we agreed to. Now, this is one of the places that I really want to plant a flag here, because when you look at what you are involved in your day-to-day life, your rent and or mortgage, if that's what you have, insurance, any of your utilities, car payment, car lease, car note, however you want to frame it. In general, every single thing that you involve yourself in, everything, is a contract. It's all contractual language. And what contractual language does is it specifically spells out the rights, responsibilities, etc. of each party. It gives you guidelines. It gives you assurances. It gives you understanding of what is expected of you, for you, by the other individual or company or corporation, etc., that you have entered into said contract. So, for example, if I sign a 30-year mortgage with a company and I say, here's how much I'm going to pay you as far as the principal and the interest goes, and you say, well, this is what we're going to do. This is the amortization schedule, right? Here's how much you're going to pay each month, et cetera, et cetera. If I break the contract, there are consequences for me. If the company breaks the contract, there are consequences for them. And this is true for every single contract that you get involved in. There is, of course, always the threat of having to go to court because of a breach of contract. And in numerous podcast episodes prior to this one, I have outlined, and of course on the website through article form, I have also highlighted the amazing nature of American work. I enter into work. The very thing that enables me to enter into and to pay for the numerous contracts that I get involved in. But I enter into work, and the vast majority of Americans do not have a contract. In fact, if there is a contract, because I'm somebody who works under a collective bargaining agreement or somebody who is represented by a union, you are underneath what we call a collective bargaining agreement. That's what the Teamsters are. But for the overwhelming majority of American workers, they are not under any kind of contract, certainly the ones that are beneficial to them. Moreover, if they are underneath a contract, it's likely to be one-sided. What do I mean? I'm talking about non-compete clauses. Your typical non-compete clause is, in fact, a contract. It is a contract saying that I will not, whatever the stipulations happen to be in that specific contract, right? It may very well be that for a year, after I am employed by said company, I will not, quote unquote, compete with them for the job that I am doing. And they may even have, outside of a time stamp or a time duration, they may even have a mileage within a certain area that I'm unable to compete. Some of them are statewide. So your livelihood then is inextricably linked with a company, which locks you in. It's a contract, but it's a contract that is unfair to you, the individual, and far more fair to the contractor or the company you're working for. Now, with a little bit of groundwork laid, right, we go back to what we were just talking about, which is the Teamsters and UPS. There was a historic contract that was entered into with UPS and Teamsters. I just detailed the significant amount of money that was paid back to shareholders and that you have net income and whatnot, and then you participate in stock buybacks. I'll get to that in a second. You have an enormous amount of money that you make. You have the reputation of providing good quality jobs. But when you live in the financial world, it's always about the next quarter. And typically speaking, the way that companies are doing it's very disingenuous and it's unfortunate. What they do is they go, what's the easiest way to make the most money? I know what I can do. I'll squeeze the wages of the labor that enables me to make the capital in the first place. And that's what's taking place, is that what UPS has decided to do, and after their I believe they called it a DVSP, after their DVSP, which is it's a buyout, is what it boiled down to. Well, after it was rejected, right, they have signed a contract, and now they're rolling out what they call a DC. It's just it's a repackaged buyout of the previous one that was rejected, overwhelmingly so, by Teamsters, by their employees. Now, what you have to remember outside, this is free, but outside of this is just a little piece of advice. You have to peel beyond the veil of composure, if you will, and you have to go, okay, well, number one, beyond the contract language, the contract dispute, the contractual issue here, you have to wonder. And you have to ask the right questions. Well, why are they offering buyouts? Here's a hint. They are not offering you a buyout unless it saves them additional money. And throughout, you can go back and listen to the first part of this podcast episode, but what does it say? It says you're basically signing over your rights to any kind of grievances, to any kind of issues here. You're not entitled to a whole bunch of other things. Oh no, by the way, you'll never work for us again. Hey, I'm gonna cut you off. I don't want to I don't want to pay you what I said contractually I'll pay you, so I'll do an illegal contract buyout. That's what's taking place. And no company, the government's included, by the way, because at the beginning, it was last year, it was in 2025. In 2025, the federal government had a whole slew of, let's say, buyouts that they were looking to pay people. I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars to buy you out, if you will, to buy you out of your job. And by the way, just while I'm on the subject of this, of the buyout at the federal government level, guess what? This might be a Republican administration currently, but the same exact thing as far as the reducing of federal jobs happened during Bill Clinton's administration too. I think it was to the tune of like 350,000 workers were let go with Bill Clinton. Left wing, right wing, same bird. So what UPS is doing then is they're looking to buy tenured or people out that are looking to make a considerable amount when it comes to retirement, company paid healthcare. I just want to get rid of you, and I want to do it, quote unquote, illegally. Now, the thing that's interesting to me and a bit sad, quite frankly, is that the labor that enabled the company to make the capital that it is, gotten to the point that it's at now has been it's been dismissed. It's been dismissed. When you are able to return 6.4 billion with a B, not an M, with a B. The company returns 6.4 billion to shareholders, and by the way, spend $1 billion on stock buybacks. Now, stock buybacks overwhelmingly used to be illegal years and years ago. So you got to be careful when you hear individuals talking about, oh, well, I want greater reduction of regulation. What they really want is if they're being honest with you, is a return to, let's say, the pre-World War II days of economics when it come down to the Industrial Revolution, where companies were able to do just about anything they wanted. There's a whole longer list of discussions when it comes to what free market capitalism is and isn't, quite frankly, in future podcast episodes. But at the end of it all, what it really boils down to is I want greater release from regulations. I want fewer regulations in general. In this case, stock buybacks is what we're talking about. You have the ability, when you buy stock buybacks, I make, in this case, going back to their numbers, I bring in $8.5 billion in cash in the previous quarter, and I return more than $6.4 billion to shareholders. And the last one is I buy $1 billion worth of stock. So if my stock looks, if it looks X amount, if I'm looking good on the stock market, and then I go ahead and buy stocks back, I have the very real ability to influence and to manipulate. Manipulate is the word that I really want to camp on. But I have the ability to influence and manipulate the way that my company is perceived stock market wise by buying back stock. You almost could call it a Ponzi scheme to some degree, but I'm able to manipulate it is what I'm able to do. And stock buybacks largely used to be illegal, and for good reason. They used to be illegal for good reason because companies, again, like I just got done saying, were able to use it as a way to manipulate the stock market and make themselves look well. This is what's taking place. And so back to the contract dispute, right? You have what you've got going on is a company that is looking to shed and break its contract. At the end of the day, is looking to break its contract. Now, for let's say a source that is different than the Teamsters. So we're going to go to Supply Chain Dive, and I'll read. It's a really quick article, but I'll read just a little bit of it to kind of give you. And again, I'll also link this particular article in the show notes so you can go and check it out. Not saying that they're pro Teamsters or against, they just happen to be reporting. The international, starting out, they say the International Brotherhood of Teamsters has filed a lawsuit against UPS, seeking a temporary restraining order on the carrier's next planned round of driver buyouts, according to an announcement from the union Monday. Last month, UPS revealed plans to launch another voluntary buyout program for full-time U.S. drivers, which are represented by the Teamsters just months after deploying a similar separation program. Again, the Teamsters mentioned that in their notice to the public. The staffing changes come as UPS continues to right-size its network in the face of lower volume from Amazon. Segue into just one additional note. Back in 2022, back in 2022, UPS was very specific in what they were calling, and I don't want to butcher this up, so I'll say this right up. They called it the bigger, not better strategy. And so what the company was doing back then was they were shifting focus away from lower margin, high volume shippers such as Amazon to prioritize higher margin, small and medium sized businesses. This was part of their strategy, and this was also on the tail end of COVID and higher significant demand. So what was happening then is what they're trying to say, and currently Supply Chain Dive is also mentioning it. They're saying that it's coming as a UPS continues to right-size its network in the face of lower volume from Amazon. Well, part of that was very intentional on UPS's part to try and attract, and they certainly did, gain more additional revenue and volume from smaller size carriers or small businesses. The Teamsters said the latest program violates the union's labor contract with UPS, including through the, quote, elimination of union jobs when UPS contractually agreed to establish more positions, end quote, according to the announcement. The injunction request aims to prevent UPS from rolling out the buyouts and establish a stay on the carrier's ability to offer these programs until an arbitrator rules on alleged violations related to last year's buyout program. Quote, we've given too much to grow and sustain this company, and we will not be sold short, end quote, Teamsters General President John O'Brien said in the union's announcement. Quote, UPS must dismantle its illegal buyout program and resolve its contract violations in the courts, or the Teamsters will see this greedy corporation in the streets, end quote. UPS is working to resolve the matter through the legal process, the company said in an emailed statement to Supply Chain Dive. It added that the lawsuit doesn't affect its operations. Prior to the lawsuit, UPS planned to offer a $150,000 separation package for full-time UPS drivers, regardless of years of service, according to an internal communication to drivers viewed by Supply Chain Dive. Quote, the offer is in addition to any retirement benefits earned, including pension and health care benefits, end quote, the communication said, adding that UPS engaged with the Teamsters about the matter in early January. Following the Teamsters lawsuit, which was filed in the U.S. District Court of Massachusetts, the timing of the new buyouts is unclear. While the Teamsters said the carrier had planned to announce the program this week, UPS didn't specify in its statement or communication to drivers its expected timeline to launch the program. The Teamsters said the planned buyout would be in a one-time lump sum payment and characterized the program as much broader than what UPS deployed previously. Last year, the company offered full-time U.S. drivers payouts of $1,800 per year of service, with a minimum offer of $10,000. The offer tended to pique the interest of drivers with 25 to 40 years of service, Nando Cicerone, EVP and president of U.S. for UPS, said in July. Upon the rollout of last year's buyouts, experts flagged the loss of veteran driver knowledge as a potential risk to delivery operations, but UPS said it remained committed to providing high levels of service even amid the staffing adjustments. That's the end of the article. Now, before I got into this and decided, okay, well, this is going to be this week's podcast episode, I am, for those of you who listen, you know that I'm, fairly avid on Reddit. I am not a part of the subreddit for the UPSers, but I found it interesting that while I was scrolling through the homepage, a one of the subreddits, the UPSers, happened to have a post, and I thought, well, I'll click on this. And it was interesting to me to see the number of individuals talking about how much, let's say, customer service and or driver, let's say employee service or employee, relationship status with company has declined over the course of several years, with some people even having been employed with UPS long before they went public, and talking about how much it has declined as far as the employee relations. I'm not surprised to see this or to read this, because this is seems to be, anyway, the status quo. It seems to be par for the course. Companies get purchased by, hedge funds or, private equity. And typically, not always, but typically what happens is their employee relations are greatly reduced in pursuit of the almighty dollar. Certainly seems to be the case for a lot of individuals on that subreddit, commenting about the decline in employee relationships, benefits, etc., etc. And it's interesting that experts are flagging the loss of veteran driver knowledge as a potential risk to delivery operations. Presumably, it's in the field of internal operations, as well as being able to handle and deal with customers on a large, regular basis. But at the end of the day, what I really want to drive home and make sure is very clear is the significant amount of what I'll say are contract disputes. At the end of it all, what it really boils down to is quite simply this: did UPS enter into a contract in which they solidified and intentionally designed through the contract process that they were going to employ even more workers? UPS is quiet about this, but the Teamsters are not. The Teamsters have said that is exactly what it was supposed to do. That is exactly what the contract said, that they were going to enter into this. Again, this is going to be a test in the court system about what companies can do, about what they can do with contract negotiations, and what they can do with signed, sealed contracts in general. Is the rule of law, if you will, the letter of the land, or is whatever a company wants to do, or anybody for that matter, with contracts, is it on the chopping block and the debate table? Is a contract a contract? And is it binding, or if it's not? And if it's not, then why do we sign contracts? Why do we have even them being negotiated? That seems fairly straightforward to me. So if you were looking for let's say a 30,000 foot overview about what is taking place when it comes to the UPS and Teamsters, there you go. There is, and I'll end it with this last little bit because I think the amount, it warrants it. But on January 27th, 2026, UPS announced it collected more than $8.5 billion in cash during the previous quarter, returned more than $6.4 billion to shareholders, and spent $1 billion on stock buybacks. That $1 billion on stock buybacks could have gone a long way to creating what they contractually negotiated, which is, let's create jobs. Rather than look to downsize a company to return maximum profits to shareholders, what they could have done is taken their manipulative stock buybacks and turned that into increasing jobs and increasing the amount of customer service that they could respond to. So there you have it, what I perceive to be a 30,000 foot overview about what's taking place between the Teamsters and the UPS. I believe it's really boils down to and distills down to a contractually negotiated break in where they seem to not want to honor their contract. It's a story as old as time, it seems like. Again, in the show notes, I will have the links to the two articles that I've specifically referenced. And if you want to, you got any questions or whatever, you can leave them either on the social media platforms, or you can go over to the contact page at thewealthyironworker.com. You can leave me a comment, contact. You can elect to, try and reach out, and maybe we can even have a longer, more robust conversation. And it does not even have to be about this specific podcast episode. We can talk about quite a bit. All right. So thanks for listening to this podcast episode. Share it out. And as always, stay safe out there. I will see you on the next one.